Well, welcome to the 700 Club. The figures are now in, ladies and gentlemen, for the first quarter, or the last quarter that we've just had. Growth at 3.1%. That is tremendous. But they say they can take it a lot higher. The president wants to make the economy great again by finally cutting taxes for the middle class. The biggest tax cut maybe since John Kennedy. So they can get out from under their heavy tax burden. But some screams are being heard from California and New York. Why? Well, they might lose the deduction for state income taxes. We'll talk more about that with our guest, Steve Moore. Terry.
Well, the president has laid out those basic principles in his tax reform plan. Now, Congress will go to work on the details. Dale Hurd has the story.
The president has begun the fight to deliver on one of his key campaign promises, to cut taxes and reform the tax code.
These tax cuts are significant. There's never been tax cuts like what we're talking about.
The basics of the plan include cutting the number of tax rates for individuals from 7 to 3, 12, 25, and 35%, along with a surcharge for the very wealthy. Cutting the tax rate for businesses from 35 to 20%, a number the president says he won't budge on. Nearly doubling the standard exemption to $12,000 for singles and $24,000 for couples, meaning that money would be tax-free. Keeping the deductions for charitable contributions and mortgages, but getting rid of the deductions for state and local taxes, a big hit for residents in high-tax states like New York and California, and eliminating the estate tax.
Our framework includes our explicit commitment that tax reform will protect low-income and middle-income households, not the wealthy and well-connected. And it's not good for me, believe me.
But predictably, Democrats disagreed, calling the plan a big windfall for the rich and a false promise to the middle class.
It is a framework that gives away the store to the wealthiest while sticking the middle class.
Trump and Republicans say it's a once-in-a-generation opportunity. The president calls the current tax system a relic and a colossal barrier that's standing in the way of the nation's economic comeback. Tax reform would require bipartisan support on Capitol Hill. The president is trying to reach out across the aisle.
Democrats and Republicans in Congress should come together, finally, to deliver this giant win for the American people and begin middle-class miracle.
And some Democrats may go along, but a deal will be tough, and Republicans have many disagreements among themselves as well.
Tax reform is going to make health care look like a piece of cake.
But President Trump and congressional Republicans are hoping they can make the tax code much simpler for millions of Americans, which means your own tax forms could be much easier to fill out. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
With us now from Washington to talk about the president's tax plan is Steve Moore. Steve's an economist with FreedomWorks. He was an economic advisor to the Trump campaign. Steve's good to see you again. Thanks for being here.
Pat, I'm in a very good mood this morning, Pat. I mean, those numbers that you recited, 3.1% growth, you know, that's up from 1.5% growth under Obama in his last year in office. So there is no question about it. This economy has really ramped up, and we're going to get 3% growth in the third quarter. And that's before we've done this tax cut, you know. So once we get this tax cut, we could get 3.5% to 4% growth. Boy, will that feel good.
You know, Steve, let me ask you a question. I've listened to a couple of those Republicans, I mean the Democrats, talking about a tax cut for the rich. How can you have a tax cut for somebody that isn't paying taxes? So the poor people are, you know, the Democrat constituency, they don't pay any taxes anyhow. So, of course, the people who are earning money and paying taxes are the only ones you can have a tax cut for. Isn't that correct?
It is. You know, it's funny, when I came in this morning, Pat, one of your assistants here said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Taxes." And she said to me, "Show me the money." You know, I think that's the way a lot of people are feeling. Show me the money. They want to see some money back in their pockets because the government is pickpocketing so much of their money. So let's talk about the middle class for a minute, Pat. The people making maybe $40,000 to $100,000 a year. And for, you know, most states, that's a middle class family. You're going to save, by my calculation, anywhere from $2,500 to $5,000 a year. year. Now, for a family that's making, say, $60,000 a year, Pat, that, by the way, is paying all those increased premiums under Obamacare, that is going to be very welcome tax relief. Now, as you know, Pat, my buddy Larry Kudlow and I helped write the original tax plan for Donald Trump during the campaign. And this plan they came up with yesterday, which I like a lot, is very similar to the original plan. What we do is we do provide lower tax rates for high-income people, but we're taking away a lot of the deductions and the loopholes. You know, when I was looking at some polling recently, 1,000 people poll about what they think of our tax system, and the word that comes up so often is rigged. The American people think the tax system is rigged to the special interest groups and the lobbyists and the politically connected. And you know what? They're right about that. Let's get rid of the lobbyists, the loopholes. Let's have everybody pay their fair share, but at a low rate that everybody can afford. And it's going to be good for the economy. I guarantee it.
Steve, the businesses, we pay corporate tax probably the highest in the world when you consider you've got the federal tax, the state tax, local taxes, et cetera. Talk about that. The president wants to bring it all to 20%. Is that going to make a big difference? And can that get through Congress?
I believe it will. And the only thing that I object to this plan, I love the plan. The only thing they took out was, you know, originally we had a 15% tax rate for our businesses, and unfortunately they made it 20. But that's still a big improvement. But I did say to some of my friends at the White House, I wish you'd stuck with the 15% rate. But yeah, we will go from the highest rate in the world. By the way, Pat, most Americans do not know that. They do not know that American businesses pay the highest tax rates. We pay higher tax rates than China, than Germany, than Canada, than almost all the European countries. We even have a higher tax rate than Sweden and Cuba, for goodness sakes. I mean, it's crazy out there. And it is putting Americans, companies at a disadvantage. I got to tell you, I had dinner a couple of nights ago with Fred Smith, who is the CEO of FedEx, one of the great American entrepreneurial companies ever. He employs hundreds of thousands of workers. And I said, you know, Fred, if we do this tax cut, what will it mean for your business? He said, Steve, we're going to go out and purchase new planes. We're going to have more delivery trucks. We're going to hire more workers. We're going to pay our workers more. That's just one company, Pat. And if you magnify that throughout the economy, you're going to talk about higher wages, more job opportunities. I think you can get 10 million jobs through the end of the decade with this plan.
Why do the Democrats want to keep the tax rates so high and punish people? Why don't they want to ease up on the American people? What is it in their psyche that makes them want to do what they want to do?
It's a sad thing, Pat, because, it used to be back in the 1960s, John F. Kennedy, who is one of our iconic presidents, he ran on cutting taxes. He said, look, cut the taxes. You'll get more jobs. You'll get more wages. You'll have a more vibrant middle class. He was exactly right about that. And then, of course, you know this, Pat, our mutual great friend, Ronald Reagan, he picked up that theme, and boy, did it work. I was on CNN a couple days ago, and they're saying, oh, this isn't going to work like it didn't work for Reagan. I said, it didn't work for Reagan. We created 20 million new jobs. The stock market went through the roof. And by the way, Ronald Reagan just squeaked by. You remember this one, Pat. He squeaked by for re-election. He only won 49 states.
Well, they used to talk, remember his running opponent, George Bush, started talking about voodoo economics.
Voodoo economics, yeah.
But the truth is, this is not going to add to the deficit. This will grow the economy. Is that what will this do to the deficit?
I believe so. That's it. Well, the budget resolution that Congress will pass calls for a $1.5 trillion tax cut over 10 years. Now, we're going to have to make up for that a couple ways. We're going to grow the economy more. And when you grow the economy and put more people to work, Pat, that means more people are paying taxes. That's a good way to balance the budget. But the other thing that you've got to do is you've got to cut some government spending. I mean, let's face it, we got a $4 trillion budget right now. We can certainly cut the spending and make up for that difference. But the other thing is, Pat, this is such an important economic lesson for your listeners, and I know people know this who listen to this show. You're never going to balance the budget if the economy isn't growing, right? Mm-hmm. Just the fact that Donald Trump has gotten us up to 3% growth, that's going to cause more tax revenues. That's going to cause, more higher wages for people. So you got to have economic growth, and you have a vibrant economy if you ever hope to balance this budget. And incidentally, I didn't answer your question about why Democrats today don't get aboard this. Have you ever been to Grand Forks, North Dakota?
No.
I was in North Dakota yesterday in Grand Forks, and North Dakota is a key state, and they have a Democratic senator, Heidi Heitkamp. For those of you watching the show, if you live in North Dakota, put some pressure on Heidi Heitkamp. 75% of people in North Dakota want this tax cut. It's going to be a tough vote for her. I think we can get Heidi Heitkamp. I think we can get 3 or 4 Democrats in the United States Senate to vote for this tax bill.
Well, it looks like Joe Manchin of West Virginia should be a candidate.
He's another one. You got it.
A whole lot of other ones. Well, you think the Congress is going to accept the president's plan as he's outlined it, or will it be some radical changes in it?
It's going to change, of course, and it's probably they're going to have to cut back on some of the, this is a big grand vision, and I love everything in it. They might have to, squeeze back on a little bit. But yeah, and what we need to do, Pat, we need to put pressure on Congress. Everybody in this room, talk to your congressman, talk to your senator, tell them we want this tax cut. We want to grow our economy, and we want better jobs for Americans. It's going to be close. It's going to be very close in the Senate, Pat, just like what we saw on Obamacare. Let's not fall 1 or 2 votes short in the Senate this time. Let's get over 50. Let's get to 55 or 60.
Well, I'm for that. Let me ask you, the truth is if they take away the deduction for state taxes, that's going to go after California and New York. It'll almost look like payback time from the Republicans and the Democrats. Talk about that.
So you're right. This is one of the big pay-fors. Is one of the stupidest deductions in our tax system is that you get to write off your state taxes from your federal taxes, which just rewards these high-tax states like California and New York. By the way, California and New York have the highest income tax rate of 13.5%. But ladies and gentlemen, you can move to Texas and Florida, pay 0. So that's why a lot of people are doing that, Pat. But they would never be able to sustain those very high tax rates if it weren't for the fact that the federal government is essentially subsidizing 40% of that by allowing people to write that off. So I'm very much in favor of getting rid of the deduction of state and local taxes. And by the way, liberals love to talk about, oh, well, let's tax the rich. 50% of the benefit of the state and local tax deduction goes to the richest 1%. It goes to the Warren Buffetts and the Bill Gates and the LeBron James of the world. So this is a good way of making the rich pay their fair share by getting rid of that deduction. It will not impact middle class workers because, Pat, under our plan, 90%. Get this, 90%, 9 out of 10 Americans will no longer have to itemize their deductions. Pat, you're not going to have the shoe boxes of receipts anymore with all of the, the charitable deduction, this and that, because you'll just check off the box. So it'll be good for the economy and simplification, and we hope to get a postcard return. Wouldn't that be something?
Fantastic. Steve Moore, thank you. You're a great salesman.
I'm ginned up. I'm ready to go. Let's get this done.
We'll come back and talk about it more. Okay. We want to see this go through. Terry, interesting.
I'm over here doing my happy dance, trying to think what I'm going to do with those shoe boxes when they're empty, right?
Well, just think of how many hours of work that'll save.
Oh, my goodness.
When you do that. And it's crazy that the Democrats would want to keep this penalty on the American people. It's like, I want to hurt you, so please put me in office.
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah. Well, hopefully people will understand what they're talking about in all of this and the consequences.
But the whole idea of this is a tax cut for the rich is nonsense. And again, the only people who pay taxes are the ones you can't give a tax cut if somebody didn't pay any taxes at all.
Well, that's an old song that's been sung for decades.
When I heard a couple of them, they've got the guy in the Senate talking that way. Now they've got another senator from out in Oregon who is a pretty good guy, but he was playing off the same playbook. Mm-hmm. They've got to stop that and say, look, let's do something good for America and quit this partisanship.